The way people or athletes underestimate Aconcagua is that it's a really big climb. It's non-technical on the normal routes as we discussed, but it's still a big climb. It takes a lot out of you. So it is tough. It's a great challenge, but it's absolutely a rewarding experience when you're up there on the summit.
Welcome to the Uphill Athlete Podcast. My name is Steve House, and I have a really great episode for you today. With me here today is Coach Martin Zor, three-time Aconcagua climber and coach to many Aconcagua athletes and climbers over the last years. Welcome, Martin.
Hi, Steve. Thanks. It's good to be here.
So today we want to talk a little bit about the challenge and logistics of climbing Aconcagua, but we want to spend most of our time in our area of expertise, which is how to physically prepare and train for Aconcagua. So, Martin, you've been there, a number of times. I'll admit right off the bat, I've never climbed Aconcagua, never guided it, never went down there. So, why don't you just sketch out for us what Aconcagua is in terms of a mountain and what the challenge is?
Sure. Yeah, I've been to Aconcagua. It's been a while, five and a half years. End of 2019. For me, it was a very important milestone for me as a climber, but also for the experience for me as a coach as well. So I really have fond, good memories of that. So for me, Aconcagua was the first like real high altitude summit. Before then, I've only climbed in the Alps, or I was trekking in Nepal. So the highest altitude I reached until that point was maybe 5,500 meters. But this was a real step up for me, a big unknown. So I went there just without expectations, but trying to make the style that I like the most, which is try to climb fast and light. And so I eventually managed this. I approached this mountain through a 360 route. So we can talk about the different routes later, but it's important to know that there are two main access valleys towards this mountain. But maybe backtrack. Aconcagua is the highest mountain of the American continent, so counting south and north, higher than Denali, almost 7,000 meters. We can say what it is in feet. I'm not good in this,
It
but
is 6982 meters, and I think that boils down to 22,838 feet.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good. So it's actually the highest mountain outside of Asia. That's probably good to realize that. So if you want to go higher, well, you need to go to the great
Himalaya.
in Himalayas and in Karakoram. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. But otherwise, the Aconcagua, at least the normal routes, they are non-technical. It's like advanced hike to some extent. It can definitely change with conditions. It can snow and it can get icy. So it's good to be prepared for any scenarios. But we can consider it not a very technical climb. Nonetheless, it's a very challenging one.
There are four routes and variations. The normal route via the Plaza de Mulas, the 360 route from Plaza Argentina, the Polish Traverse, and the Polish Glacier. And these are all a little bit kind of related, if you will, a lot of these routes. And, I think you sort of cut your teeth on the doing a speed ascent from Plaza de Mulas. I believe you took the 360 route and you were able to complete that in, what was it, like 3.5 hours or something insane, right?
Yes. So I approached the mountain through well, they have the names, these valleys, Vacas Valley and the other one. Anyway, that doesn't matter really. The guiding companies will guide you there. What is important to know is the Plaza de Mulas is considered the normal route. It's the easiest one. The approach towards the base camp is shorter, so it takes usually 2 days of hiking, which is then usually interspersed with one rest day. So it's a like 4 or 5 hour hike towards the intermediate camp. From there, the next day you go just for a short hike towards the south face, the very impressive one, south face of Aconcagua. And that's gonna consider like an easy rest day, also staying at the same similar altitude. And then the third day you go towards the Plaza de Mulas base camp. Whereas if you go towards Plaza Argentina, so that's the eastern side of the mountain, it usually takes about 3 to 4 days. So it's definitely longer. It's about 50, 45, 50 kilometers in total distance. But it also allows you to acclimatize progressively. And then the 360 route sort of circumnavigates the mountain. So that's why it's called that way. It's pretty beautiful. Like both routes are amazing for me. It's a stunning place. The Andes are a special place. Condors flying above your head, and so it's really quite stunning. But as a character, like geologically, it's a desert. It's a very like barren rock. Not so many glaciers nowadays, but it's still beautiful.
So, what are some of the challenges of climbing Aconcagua?
Let's break it down into like different factors. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the physical demands of the climb, so you're looking into like multi-day climb from camp to camp with the increasing altitude. So the altitude has a big effect on your capacity.
Hmm.
If you break it down into the days, it's easy to look up the way the camps are situated on the mountain. So I would say the first part is actually getting to the base camp. I think the base camp is around 14,000 feet for 4,400 meters. So that starts to be definitely felt, and you are sometimes kind of pushed into relatively fast climb. Usually, what follows after getting to the base camp is you do a carry of material to the first camp, come back down and recover. What then follows is then actually climbing from camp to camp, higher and higher. First, there are three camps, main camps on the normal route: 5,200, 5,600, and then 6,000 meters eventually. Cholera camp, which is the highest one. So there are different logistics on the mountain. So most athletes have to carry their weight, everything, all the gear to the first camp, second camp, and eventually even the third one. So that can be quite a big carry. It's quite important, and you have to be ready for it.
Yeah. So, I'm
Combined
hearing
with
that you
the
really have to carry heavy loads. You have to do like basically steep hiking and difficult ground like scree and that kind of stuff. And then you
yes.
have to deal with, for most of us, pretty extreme altitudes.
Yes, some athletes choose to not do that. They actually hire porters for that, but then that's something that you have to answer for yourself, like ethically, or
Hmm.
how do you want to approach this climb. So that's definitely possible, but most of the athletes that I work with, they chose to do it themselves. So then you have to really be ready for it, and that takes a while to build up that capacity. It's good to know that with the cold, extreme cold actually, and the winds, you have to have the high altitude gear pretty much. So you're walking
Hmm.
in really big boots. You have to carry also crampons in case the terrain above is icy or snowy. So that's a lot of weight. And walking in that scree, it's like moving rocks often with the big boots. It's pretty nasty. It's not nice. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to be aware of this when
Yeah.
you're preparing for the climb.
And it sounds like, on just doing a little rough math, on summit day, you're going to be doing basically 1,000 meters of gain and descent. That's probably the lightest day in terms of load carrying, but that comes on top of a bunch of back-to-back days of carrying very heavy backpacks in very difficult conditions of scree and big gear, clunky gear, hard to balance. It's windy. One of the things that people don't think about when they hear about wind is it makes it very difficult to sleep in a tent that's like flapping all night. I mean, I've spent a lot of nights in flapping tents, and it can really be exhausting because you just can't, you just never get into that deep sleep because there's so much noise around you. And energy, like just like this, like just this anxiety that you're, is hardwired into us, that somehow we're going to get blown off the mountain, even though we're most certainly not. Plus, trying to eat. That's another huge challenge on these high altitude expeditions, is just getting enough calories in. What what is it that we need to think about when we think about physically preparing for an expedition like this? Is it the just the aerobic base? Is it the strength? Is it the muscular endurance? Is it the balance? I mean, there's so many different things here. How do you approach that as a coach?
Well, yeah, you named it. You named it. So all the factors that. So the way I approach this as a coach is actually doing this. Try to break it down into the factors, and then see, okay, like how each of these factors is important, and try to then cover them more or less in the training. And some of them basically are in the same category, right? So we talk a lot. We talk about the aerobic base, having that's really the base of everything else, and on top
Yeah,
of it we
absolutely.
we kind of include the rest, right? So maybe back to what you said before, what is involved during this Aconcagua climb. So as I was saying, you need to approach the base camp and then carry a lot of weight to the higher camps, and you're facing higher and higher altitude, which is exhausting, which is affecting
Hmm.
your sleep quality, which is affecting the nutrition, food intake. So everything is challenged. You're challenged mentally. So it's just good to be aware of this all, and then actually planning and getting higher and higher towards the camp 2, camp 3, getting ready for that big summit day, which is actually, when it comes to Aconcagua, that is the biggest elevation gain. If you start from the camp 3, from Cholera camp, on the normal route. So you're going for 1,000 meters elevation gain, 3,035 feet elevation gain.
For those that haven't done a lot of high altitude mountaineering, you need to realize that starting at a high altitude and then going another 1,000 meters, 3,300 feet up, and then coming back down, you're going to feel that. You're always going to feel that. It's very common. Also, like for example, on Denali, you roughly climb that high, like this kind of 1,000 meters on summit day. If you sort of look around, I mean, even Mount Rainier is about 1,200 meters on summit day. Mont Blanc is around 1,000 meters on the summit day from the hut. A lot of these climbs have that amount of climbing on summit day. And what happens is, you climb up to an altitude you're well above what you're acclimated to, and then you come back down. But as you come back down, you're actually still sort of getting, if you're getting sick, you're actually getting sick on the way down, usually oftentimes, and you're feeling, if not sick, you're just feeling worse and worse and worse. And so coming back down is one of the reasons that, besides just the mental letdown of having been to the summit and accomplished something, you are physically feeling worse as you return to high camp. And coming back into high camp is people don't talk about it, but it's often one of the hardest moments. But let's go back to, we've talked a lot on this channel about the importance of aerobic bays. We know that this is absolutely key, especially at high altitudes where we have to be aerobic. We really can't go anaerobic at 6,800 meters. It's pretty difficult to do, and it's also not very productive. So this is absolutely critical for people climbing Aconcagua, and it just takes a certain amount of time. So why don't you how long does an athlete or a potential Aconcagua climber need to be preparing? Like how many weeks or months do you feel like is ideal for someone to start building their aerobic base with structured training?
It's a great point here you're mentioning. So when an athlete approaches us coaches and has some certain expectations about, okay, I want to climb a certain mountain in a couple of months, so we need to kind of do a reality check, so to speak. But
Yeah.
let's talk about Aconcagua here. Aconcagua season, by the way, we didn't talk about that, starts in December and goes probably until late February, sometimes March, but that's getting late. So
Hmm.
now in June, we are looking into like having 6 months to prepare. So is that enough? So of course that it depends. So we always have to approach each athlete individually, where they are right now, and try to assess, do some testing, and see. Okay, like we have 6 months to train. So what can we achieve in those 6 months? So we can kind of guess, but also we work with physiology, with the knowledge of physiology, and we know that the adaptations that are coming from the training, they have a certain timeline. So from there we can do the planning, and I think we can do a pretty good job with most athletes to prepare them for this climb. So then, as I mentioned before, I kind of work with those factors, try to break it down into the factors. You need to be prepared for, well, back-to-back days, long hikes, is with increasing steepness. Work with fatigue, altitude, the nutrition, all those challenges in a very harsh environment with cold wind possibly, and worse and worse sleep, and looking into a really big summit day on top of all those days leading up to the summit. And just by the way, sometimes you will start the summit day not from Camp 3. Some companies actually decide to do this from the Camp 2. So just to make it more challenging, sound more challenging, you might actually be doing 1,500 meters elevation gain in that last day. So, and then, as you mentioned, also go down. So that the descent we often kind of forget, and that's where it sometimes goes very wrong. You just don't have enough reserves in you to actually come down safely. So of course you have a guide and porter next to you helping you, but of course you want to be independent and have that in you to come back down.
Yeah.
So all in all, how to prepare, coming back to the aerobic base. So that's really the kind of the core of the training for endurance. So it comes down to we need to determine where your aerobic threshold is. An aerobic threshold is explain to you what the intensity zones are and why we are actually trying to establish them, right? So we want to target a certain type of metabolism, uh, talk about aerobic efficiency, and then of course that's not everything. You mentioned like the aerobic versus anaerobic. How is that important? I definitely touch in during the training cycles, so during the whole year cycle. I definitely go into the anaerobic zone sometimes with the athletes. We
Hmm.
try to also improve their lactate threshold capacity. We try to increase the VO max, so the maximum aerobic capacity, which is actually the top of the sort of like aerobic engine, if we can call it that way. But when it comes to the climb, the most specific intensity that you will need to have like really strong is really the aerobic base, so called, and that is the most important one.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something that you just said and make sure that people hear this, that because we are constrained, for lack of a better word, by our physiology. And when we condition our aerobic base, we are changing our metabolic properties. And I think I would really encourage people to, if they haven't already, go and read some of the blogs and listen to some of the other podcasts that we have at Uphill Athlete about aerobic metabolism and how what happens when you train it, because there's really no shortcuts. If somebody comes to us 8 weeks before Aconcagua, I wish I had a magic pill that they could swallow to make them aerobically fit, but I just can't help them as much as if they come to me 8 months before. If I have 8 months with an athlete working towards a big climb, we can make incredible changes in their metabolism as it pertains to the ability to go at moderate and low heart rate intensities for hours on end, carrying heavy packs and doing all the things that are required on an expedition like this. So the more time you give yourselves to prepare, the much better off you'll be. There's really no shortcuts to developing your aerobic system. And this is one of the uncomfortable truths of training for mountaineering, is that you need a lot of time to do it. And I also really encourage people to think about this on a multi-year scale of, not just what do I need to do in the next 2 or 3 months, but, I'm a mountaineer. How do I continually improve my aerobic base over years? Because I'm always going to climb mountains, because that's part of my life. And that's really when you get into these long term, incredible, positive adaptations.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think we can mention the core training principles here, right? So it's kind of uh, just really working from the base, so keeping it easy, moderate, and yes, you want to go sometimes to the high intensity, but I guess where most people get it wrong is just pushing a little too hard, a little too often, or almost all the time, almost every session. You just kind of like, I need to push hard to get better, and that is where it often goes wrong, where it leads to plateaus in your performance, or just not really seeing getting better or getting stronger. You wonder why, what am I getting wrong? So that's really one of the first messages we try to get to the athletes, is just try to stay patient, and you will see the improvements in everything. But really try to be consistent. I guess
There's
another
no
training
short.
principle.
Sorry if I may interrupt. I just want something you said. I just want to summarize, and we said it a thousand times before, but you cannot shortcut aerobic base building with high intensity training. High intensity training absolutely has an important place within training, but it needs to come on top of the aerobic base, especially when we're talking about high altitude mountaineering objectives. And
Yeah.
I think you're really good at blending those as a coach, and that is sort of some of the magic of either building a great training plan, or building a great training program for an athlete that you're coaching, is to blend all these different modalities. So what is, if we're looking at someone, let's take a hypothetical athlete, and they're, let's say, 6-8 weeks into working with you. What does a week of training look like for that person?
So I guess after having established the thresholds, just to really making sure that we have those right. So I guess what the week looks like, I will start with the rest day. That is the maybe also mentioning the recovery, the importance of the recovery. That's where actually the body is getting stronger and is adapting to all the training load. I would say then I will kind of have the two categories of the workout. So the key sessions of the week, and then the maintenance sessions. So what those key sessions can look like, it really depends on the training phase. So the phase of the training, I'm trying to work in on one factor. So let's say it can be the aerobic base. So the key sessions could be just the simple zone 2 sessions, or the aerobic sessions, which what I'm then changing throughout the training phase, or in that 1 week, is the volume. So it can be 1 hour, it can be 2 hours, it can be actually 5-6 hours in the zone 2, which definitely is super important, and then actually also covers the fatigue resistance. So dealing with a lot of fatigue. So then I'm actually looking for certain metrics, certain like a feeling, like how does that feel? How does it? When did you get tired? How did that fatigue show up? Is it more kind of the cardio function, or is it so the heart rate is kind of starting to go down because of the fatigue, or is it muscular fatigue? And it can be, so back to the key sessions, I would say the strength part. So usually there is at least one strength session in the week, and so we can be looking in the maximum strength, or we can be covering the muscular endurance protocol, which is for me the very specific one before most of the expeditions. So that's the
Yeah.
capacity that I would definitely want to improve the most. And then the rest of the week looks like the maintenance. So it can just be simply the easy, moderate sessions. or then recovery. So very easy. Instead of having a complete rest day, I ask the athlete to just go out, but just very easy. Don't really focus on gaining the fitness. It's more about helping and facilitating the recovery.
Yeah. And I want to highlight a concept that we talk about as coaches, not just internally at Uphill Athlete, but universally among endurance coaches, that there is this concept of the training density. And this is the idea that over a period, and you can use 7 days or 10 days or whatever period you want, let's stick with the 7 days. And how is that how dense is that training? So, for example, if I have a really hard strength workout on Wednesday and then a really long aerobic effort on Thursday, the next day, that's really high density. There may be a time and a place for that, but this is where you need to know the difference between when it's the right moment to do that for the athlete versus having the strength training on, say, a Tuesday and having the long endurance aerobic session on, say, a Saturday with lots of time in between, with lots of these kind of recovery workouts in between. That's much lower training density. And this is another one of those dials that as coaches we're working with, because it's not only the workouts, right? It's also the human, what is going on in their lives, how much are they working, how long is their commute, all how many responsibilities do they have? Because stress is stress, and the body doesn't really differentiate between training stress and stress due to other external factors. So we need to really think about that. And that's something that as we progress, we can increase the density as an athlete adapts and make some of these hard sessions uh, be purposefully close together. And one of the things that I know that you and I have talked about, and we've talked about internally as a coaching team very often, is the art of starting to build back-to-back long zone 2 sessions, which I think is very relevant for Aconcagua. You know, typically for most athletes, it's Saturday and Sunday because most of our athletes are working professionals and they have full-time jobs. So that's the weekend is when they have the time. And so that's what does that start to look like if somebody gets to the point where they're going to be able to do two longer zone 2 sessions. What does that look like? Is it like 1 hour and 3 hours? Is it 2 hours, 2 hours? What is that sort of looking like?
Sure. Yeah, I like it. It's you actually touched on some important points here. So maybe first that most of us are not professional athletes, so we actually need
Right.
to also include all the other stressors in our life. So then, of course, I need to account for that and adjust the plan based on the athlete's life and duties and recovery or the lack of sleep, for example. Right. So the plan can be look perfect on the calendar, but it needs to be adjusted on daily basis. So the daily, pretty much daily communication is a key there. Then how do I kind of keep making sure that, let's say, you have the space for the strength and the recovery after the workout, and then how far apart are these key sessions, right? So I would say maybe somewhere beginning or middle of the training phase. We talk about months leading to the climb or to the project, to the objective. So I guess we try to really develop these kind of unique factors. But then sometimes the life is not perfect, so the athlete kind of needs to shuffle things around. So what happens if we put like hard strength session and maybe long zone 2 workout, long hike, long uphill day, close together. So I actually sometimes encourage that, possibly closer to leading to the climb, because yes, as you already mentioned, this is working possibly the fatigue resistance, we call it, or the durability. So you are actually tired leading going into the next session. And that is something very important also to develop. That also helps me as a coach to kind of increase the training load. Sometimes, most of the time, I guess, most coaches try to increase the overall training load in the training block. by increasing the volume or increasing the intensity or both. But sometimes we don't need to do that. We actually can kind of shuffle the workouts as it is with that given volume and putting the harder sessions together. And that actually increases that training stress. And it's quite an efficient way to do it. I think with most of the type of athletes we have, the time crunch athletes. And so it's just something I wanted to mention. But then I
Yeah,
guess coming to the specific phase before the objective, what did that can look like? So yes, I believe that for most athletes that would be the weekend. We have the time. We have the time to train. So I sometimes actually put the day off just before the Friday to make sure that the athlete has actually the capacity to do the big long day or actually the big back to back. So that is for me also very important to actually okay like prepare that body and to really go big and deep into like hitting that physiology and so that's one thing. And then I guess it really depends. It can start with the first big day. So that's basically coming from that rest day, making sure that the body is rested. And so I just kind of go bigger. I put like the bigger day on as a first, and then second day so it can be like 4 hours, 2 hours, so Saturday to Sunday, or it can be equal. It really depends on the options that the athlete has as well. I also try to make sure that mentally it is manageable. So some athletes they don't have hills or mountains around, which is I guess the most specific way we can train for mountain objectives. Sometimes it's really just the gym options, so Stairmaster, incline treadmill, where we can really focus on those specific factors like the uphill capacity. And so putting asking the athlete to do 4, 5, 6 hours on the Stairmaster, I mean, that's sometimes it's necessary for sure. But I try to be careful with that because the mental aspect is really important, and the boredom, just the mental strain of it is really quite high. So and then asking the athlete to do it again, even maybe less so on Sunday. I mean, it's sometimes very tough ask, but
yeah.
try to I guess juggle all these aspects, the physical and the mental, based on the daily side.
I want to highlight something that you said, which is, I think, an area where a lot of people who are working from a training plan or working from the books or working from Reddit or wherever they're getting their training information make mistakes. And that is moving workouts around. When people look at a training plan, whether it's uphill athlete training plan or from another provider, often they'll take the training plan and then they'll look at it at the beginning of the week and they'll say, well, this doesn't fit my schedule. So I'm going to move this to this day and this to this day and that to that day because that's when I have time because I have the babysitter this day or I have this work trip that day. And they don't take into consideration that that distribution of the training loads over that week has been very carefully thought through. And when you do that, you're randomizing the training density, which is a really good way to get overtrained, honestly, because especially if you inadvertently increase the training density too much too soon, more than what you're ready for, and or you shoot yourself in the foot and cause yourself to plateau because you're already well along in your training and all of a sudden you've taken the training density from high to really low. And so if you've done that, you're not going to adapt and you're not going to increase in your fitness. So this is a concept that's really important. It's really thought through. It's something that coaches spend probably a lot of their mental energy thinking about when they're working with athletes. So want to highlight that. That is a really good point that you brought up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's we can agree on this. The for each athlete, I guess the back to the individuality. That's the one of the most important training principles. So each athlete is individual, and they are at their given level of fitness. So you cannot just throw at the athlete's training plan for somebody else. It will go wrong most of the cases. So there's the optimal dose of training, and we need to figure it out very quickly in the beginning of the coaching process. And yes, just monitor throughout then the training phases, monitor the athlete. So I guess the fatigue is an important part. If of course the fatigue has to happen so that the body adapts to it. But if there is too much of it, then the overtraining is a real danger here, and that's something to absolutely avoid. How
Yeah.
do we do that? I guess to just communicate, try to see all the metrics in Training Peak, so the response to the training, and then the recovery metrics. So if it's a resting heart rate variability, or just really the communication, just to kind of see, okay, notice the signs of fatigue, or the stagnation, lack of response to the training. Those are the signs of the excessive fatigue, I guess. And it's just good to take a rest day, take a easier week, and making sure that we do this right.
I want to drill down on something that you just touched on, which is the data. And we are living in an era where athletes are swamped with data potentially. And if you are an expert or if you are a coach, you will understand the when and where and how of something like heart rate variability. But if you are not an expert, this is very difficult to put in the context of everything else that's going on with your physiology. I want to encourage people to, both those working with a coach, to communicate this. And if you're not working with a coach and you're using a training plan, to listen to this simple response to this question: how am I feeling? Because this simple question is going to assimilate all of the data that we have, whether you know it or not. And it's not a number or any of these. It doesn't need to come from a wearable. Your subjective feeling of how your body is doing is going to incorporate how you slept, uh, how well you ate, how well your nutrition has been supporting your training, how much stress you're under or not, how hard the workout was, how high the training density is. All these things are going to kind of come together and be very, very valuable. I look at a lot of athlete data, and if my athletes don't put a subjective note about how they're feeling in their workout in Training Peaks, I always text them, and it becomes a joke because it's like the most common question in my chats with my athletes. It's just like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? How are you feeling? And I was like, what I'm going to ask you? It's, how are you feeling? Because you didn't tell me over there in the comments. So I need to know before, so I can think about how to adjust or whether or not to adjust the training for the coming days. So that's a super important thing, and I want people to really encourage them to. And it's also connects. If I may become slightly philosophical for a second, I think it connects very deeply to the purpose of climbing mountains and training and running ultras and all these things that our community is doing, which is really like understanding ourselves and making space for checking in on ourselves and how we are doing. And that's a practice, right? You got to do that to get good at it. So I think that's super valuable. So thanks for highlighting that, Martin. I think that's really key.
I think so. I would just maybe respond to this. That is, I guess we can go into all those topics separately, and I think many have been covered in other podcasts here on this space. But how do we measure intensity? Which metrics are we looking for? And
Mhm.
I think I can definitely attest to this, that what research is showing and what kind of the coaching world is saying is that yes, we are getting more and more data, and we can definitely use that. It takes a lot of experience and knowledge to be able to read between kind of the different lines on the graph.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the subjective feeling, it still has a big place, if not the most important one, actually, in the end of the day. Even with elite athletes, when it comes to the coaches, asking them how do you feel? All the data is showing great, but the athlete says, like, well, I wasn't feeling it today. And
Mm.
so that the coach, a good coach, will definitely pay attention to this and maybe step on the brake a bit, because there is something going on under the surface where the heart rate or breath rate or power meters, they don't really show yet, but something is
Mm,
going on there. So I think
100%.
the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, using that, or then basically the feedback, subjective feeling, is so important. But then I guess why we are here for as well, for the athletes, and why they are hiring us, is they just don't really know how to read themselves maybe at the beginning. So for me, it's quite an exciting part of this of the coaching work, is try to help them with this. And this is so relevant and so important in the mountains and in the extreme altitude, especially. You need to know yourself, like how hard is the effort right now? Can I manage this? Will I be okay in 1, 2, 3 hours? Will I have enough capacity for that descent, as we discussed before? And on Aconcagua, on Everest, on these high mountains, it is so important. And so I try to always kind of work with the data, connect the dots, establish the heart rate zones, but then definitely make sure that the athlete starts to understand, okay, this is what the zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, etc., they feel like. And so they
Mhm.
can connect the dots. And so they don't need to rely on the heart rate data. Why is that also super important to say within our space of mountain sports, is that heart rate is not a reliable metric when it comes to already like fatigue, dehydration, which happen in a multiple hour workout. So the long workouts, you have to rely less and less on heart rate as a metric of intensity. But then when it comes to altitude, when it comes to heat, and like other stressors, actually life stressors, lack of sleep,
Hydration is a big one.
yeah, yeah, I mentioned the dehydration, right? So then they affect the heart rate in a way that you just cannot rely on it. And when it
Yeah.
comes to Aconcagua, coming back to Aconcagua, you will not be able to rely on heart rate. It's just at that level already, like base camp, and anything higher, it will just be off. It will not reflect the intensity. It will mostly reflect the stress that the body is going through with the altitude, with
Yeah.
very dry air. So to a large extent, you'll be dealing with a lot of dehydration during the climb. So you should really know how to pace yourself, pacing strategies, right? Yeah, I think these are very valid, great points.
If you're enjoying the show and want to take the next step in your training, join our newsletter and receive a free 4-week sample training plan. Head on over to uphillathlete.com/let's go, and once you sign up, you'll instantly get a link to try out some of our most popular training plans. It's a great way to get a feel for how we train our athletes for big mountain goals. Check it out at uphillathlete.com/let's go. That's uphillathlete.com/LETSGO.
I want to try to pull together some of the different threads we've talked about in terms of the the different threads we can pull on to help people train for climbing Aconcagua. And then I want to move into acclimatization as its own subject for a moment. But we have talked about aerobic base. We've talked about the consistency required of building that. We've talked about building that into the capacity to do longer back-to-back sessions, meaning 1 day, 2 days in a row of long zone 2 sessions. We've talked about the strength training, and we didn't go deeply into it, but you did mention the periodized approach that we use, that all coaches use for approaching strength training, from general strength to a maximum strength to muscular endurance, which is the most specific and most relevant to Aconcagua. But you need to do the other two prior to that and have had a good buildup to get the most out of the muscular endurance. Of course, you have to continually maintain the strength you've developed, particularly in your core, as you move through these longer periods. We've talked about the amount of time all of this takes. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about high intensity, but the muscular endurance is part of that. It's typically done at zone 3, where we'll also talk about in many cases, if we have enough time. If I don't have enough time with an athlete, I would omit this, but if I have enough time with an athlete, I'm absolutely going to do higher intensity intervals, like zone 4 intervals. People, I often explain this to people, that those are like strength training for the heart, essentially, because we're asking the heart to work really hard for a really short period of time, and that's really healthy for that muscle. And that is really valuable at high altitude. And of course, doing all of this while staying out of injury, staying in good health, um, and hopefully having some time to work through this period on the technique of mountaineering, whether that's hiking up and down scree slopes or getting to a glaciated peak or something. But that's something you want to try to build into this progression. Usually, as was for you, Martin, most people that go to Aconcagua, it's a big step up from something they've done before in terms of the the complexity of all of these different factors that mountaineering makes up. I think high altitude mountaineering is sort of a cruel mistress in a way, because you know it everything gets more complicated the more difficult it gets. There's no way. It's very difficult to just increase the difficulty of one sliver. You can't just increase the altitude. You increase the altitude, and all the other factors by nature get harder. So it's very difficult to kind of remove some of the variables so you can test yourself in limited ways as you move through, the way it would be in a lot of other sports like rock climbing, for example, where you can do really short routes and do many of those before you start doing longer routes, for example. But
Yeah.
that's sort of a quick summarization. I want to talk about specifically acclimatization. And I want to just sort of preface this by saying the best thing you can do for your acclimatization is have a really good aerobic base and be healthy, right? Not and those two, I'm going to emphasize both of those equally, because it's important not to have any kind of infections or anything like that. No kumbu cough, as we like to call it, and to be well aerobically trained. And then the actual physiology of acclimatization is not something we're going to go deeply into here, but I want to talk about it as it pertains to Aconcagua, because it is what most people are looking for, or most people are identifying as the primary challenge. They want to go and climb an almost 7,000 meter peak. How was this for you when you went there for the first time?
So for me personally, Aconcagua was, as I said in the beginning, big step up with altitude, so something very new. And I think I came prepared in a way that I live in Chamonix. I have access to the Alps, so but it's still a relatively medium level of altitude compared to Aconcagua and anything higher in Himalayas. But for me, the biggest advantage was that I used to work on the high altitude lift here in Chamonix, which goes to almost 4,000 meters, and I was working up there as kind of a lift guy, nothing fancy, but the acclimatization part was amazing. I basically spent there like 4 or 5 days per week, sometimes even sleeping up there. And for those who know Chamonix and Mont Blanc and the area, so it's not an easy. It's quite a substantial altitude already. And so I think it did something to my body. Like I worked out there for I think 11 years. So that for me was a big confidence builder. So that I would be fine. So this was basically happening like after the summer season. I had several weeks off, so I was not at that altitude, and I flew to Argentina. I went to Aconcagua, but I was pretty confident that my body will respond really quickly. So then coming to Argentina, you fly to Mendoza. That's a kind of flatlands in Argentina. You take a bus or a van. They bring you down to Penitentes, which is the kind of a road across the border. You get to Chile, and that's I think close to then 3,000 meters, and you start your hike towards the base camp. So I was just really training hard since the beginning. Not something we want to recommend, but I was really kind of really motivated to try myself to try like a strong fast time in that altitude. So I guess we don't need to recommend this kind of strategy for most athletes. But yes, I think to talk about the acclimatization and what's needed, you need the time. Your body needs time. So for me, I spent there almost 3 weeks, which is kind of the limit as well with the permits. You need a permit. You need to pay for the permit on Aconcagua. So the limit is 20 days, meaning like you enter the park on the approach towards the base camp. So that takes you a couple of days, right? So you need to, with the climb needs to happen within 20 days. But then most of the companies that you go with, the logistics are set pretty much to, I think, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And then there is some space for wet weather. So probably like 20, 12, 15 days. I don't think many people stay there for longer than that. So when it comes to acclimatization and how long it takes, mostly you should be fine. Mostly your body should have the time to adapt. I would say maybe I can mention some companies. They nowadays lead these flash expeditions, so fast expeditions. We can talk about that possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is actually to pre-acclimatize back at home using either the real altitude, if you are lucky enough to live close to the real mountains and high enough to actually offset the adaptations. Or you can pre-acclimatize at home using hypoxic tents, generators, and that's the topic we've covered already in different podcasts. And so, in that sense, you can climb Aconcagua possibly within 10 days, or even shorter sometimes. Another like chapter possibly to touch on, and it's important to know to mention this. There are companies now selling oxygen climbs, so climbing with supplemental oxygen. I think it's the idea behind is to kind of prepare the client, these types of clients to for the high altitude climbs in Himalayas, so they kind of get used to the setup and what it means, what it does to your body. I don't personally recommend, because I think Aconcagua is a great step up for everybody, as it was for me as an athlete. I think it's great to experience that, to just test your body, because most people climb Aconcagua as a part of the seven summits, 7
Mm-hmm.
highest mountains on 7 continents. So the logical step up then is Denali, and then Everest eventually. And so you want to know what happens, how your body responds to this level of altitude. So as it is really close to 7,000 meters, that is usually kind of the limit of where you need to get without oxygen on, for example, on Everest. I mean, it kind of depends, but you probably want to get there without supplemental oxygen. If that
Yeah.
doesn't happen, I mean, you're limiting yourself. You definitely can put the supplemental oxygen on Everest lower than that, but you have a kind of more narrow margin for your performance on
Yeah.
these big mountains.
I don't have enough experience. I don't have any experience with oxygen mask and apparatus to have an educated opinion on whether or not that's good personally. But it does make intuitive sense to me that the goal of climbing to 7,000 meters here is to see how your body responds to altitude, and not just that, to get used to how bad it feels. Because
Yes.
the reality is, we're sitting here and we're both at sea level at home, and we can talk about how this as if it's something that is very abstract, but being in high altitude is just really uncomfortable. And I think that the most relatable thing the most relatable way I can explain it is it's like being very hungover, but you never get better. You feel nauseous, you may be vomiting, you feel exhausted, you have a massive headache, you have no motivation, you don't want to do anything. Like, I remember the first time I went to high altitude, I was very young. I was 20 years old, and I got up to about 6,500 meters. And, I remember waking up, I slept at 6,500 meters, and I remember waking up. It took me, like, I can't remember, but it was like 3 hours just to get my sleeping bag in my backpack so I could walk down, because I was just flat on my back. And eventually you realize that feeling, and everyone's feeling is different and it changes over time and every expedition is different, all that. But being able to operate through that is a skill. And it's a little bit I've talked about on this channel and others about how to manage fear. This is a little bit like how to manage pain. And one of the things you realize from climbing at high altitude a lot is, imagine pain goes from 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. And the thing is about my experience with pain is it goes to 10, but there is no 11. It doesn't get worse. Like, it gets bad, and then that's kind of as bad as it gets. And once you can kind of just accept that, relax, and operate through that, you can do quite a lot. And it's mostly a mental game. So understanding how you feel at really high altitude, which I'm going to tell you right now is you're going to feel bad. and relaxing into that, I feel bad, but I'm doing this. What's the next thing I can do? I have to put my crampon on my left boot. Okay, let's find the crampon. Let's get it on. Let's get the strap through the buckle. You just break it down into these really, I need to start the stove. Okay, how do I start? Like, you just break it down into these very, very simple things. And this is the value of exposing yourself to high altitude, in my opinion, of doing something like Aconcagua. So don't underestimate it. Don't expect it's just going to be like a super fun picnic in the sun with your friends. If you want that, go to the beach. If you want to understand how your body is going to operate and what it's going to feel like, and learn how to operate through this discomfort, then absolutely, like, meet the mountain on its own terms.
I agree 100% with this. I think why would you kind of reuse that challenge? Because that's what you're looking for. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not right now going into the philosophical part here, but I think it's actually you can test yourself on a close to 7,000-meter mountain, which is non-technical, at least talking about the normal route here, right? Which
Yeah.
is a big advantage. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
most athletes they're approaching us because they want to get into mountaineering, but then they also eventually want to try the seven summits or just try some harder climbs in the great ranges in Asia. So this is a challenge that is relatively easy to take, logistically well organized, and you can get a lot of data there. Like, for me as a coach working with the data, so I will get a lot of information how you deal with the altitude, and you talked about it, right? Like, how does it feel? Because the response to altitude, as is so, to some extent with training, but maybe less so, is really complex and really individual. And
Yeah.
it is related to fitness, but it's not at all it's not 100% related as well. Like, you can be really fit, but it still deal badly with altitude. So it's
It's related but not
it's
correlated.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So this is a great kind of experience where you learn yourself, learn about yourself, learn about your body, but also coming back to the philosophical part, you will get to know yourself. Working with a lot of adversity, with a lot of these factors, and talking about like being non-technical. I mean, it can snow up there, right? It looks like kind of bare rock and just a scree, but then I had clients sending me messages on Garmin saying, "Wow, there's 50 centimeters of snow. I wasn't ready for this." So not many people are, because it really doesn't snow there so often, but it can, and so you need to be ready for these unexpected events. But that's what mountaineering is about a lot, and so I think it's really good to have this experience as we have from the mountains, and then helping our athletes with this to be prepared. So back to the training, you want to be as physically prepared as possible. That is your biggest asset. And then I guess go to Aconcagua and learn, okay, like, how will my body be affected by this altitude? How can I manage? How will my speed be reduced? Because it will be reduced to like really a large extent. How do I deal with sleeping? Because some people really struggle to sleep up there, and that of course affects your recovery and your capacity.
Yeah.
So all these things, that's a super valuable information for me as a coach. And then we take it to the next mountains. And
Yeah.
so I guess the biggest advantage I see on Aconcagua is that it's non-technical. So you can kind of really focus on this, the performance and the altitude and dealing with that. Having
That's
said
really
that,
nice.
there are again the more technical routes, like the Polish Glacier, for example. That's a no joke at all. It's a 50, 60 degrees snow slope, sometimes icy. So you actually, some athletes ask me, hey, I kind of don't want to do this long hike. So on the scree, I'd rather do something more difficult. So we can discuss that, of course. And so then we're looking into a very different scenario. You're climbing quite a serious route, and the most difficult part is actually close to the summit, so close to 7,000 meters. So we can then take all that information and as a preparation for maybe more technical climbs in Himalayas or
Yeah,
Karakora.
that's great. I couldn't agree more. I think that Aconcagua is a super valuable kind of crucible for people to go through. One of your specialties and academic interests as well is high altitude physiology, and you're working on doing some studies in that area. But you also are running this pre-acclimatization, this hypoxic conditioning with athletes that are heading over to high altitude objectives like Aconcagua, but others as well. What is that? Give me the 5 minute university and what pre-acclimatization is.
Sure. So I guess what is acclimatization is the way our body adapts to hypoxia. So that's the word, the lack of oxygen that our body senses in altitude, which is related to the lower and lower barometric pressure. I mean, we discussed the detailed physiology in other podcasts. So I guess what I am trying to help athletes with is to the strategy here. So sometimes it involves simulating altitude at home, so using the generators on like Hypoxico. So that is one part. So, other athletes, they have options to go to the real mountains. So you live in Colorado, for example. You actually live at altitude that is quite substantial enough to actually elicit really good amount of adaptations. So there's less need to do that or worry about it. And we actually getting enough data from possibly climbing the 14ers in the States, right? You can actually do some specific sessions on these mountains. So that's often the case with my athletes living in the regions with mountains. So we take it from there. I kind of tell them, okay, this is the situation. This is what you can do on Aconcagua. We can also, if we find the logistics with companies, we can make your trip shorter. So you don't need to actually spend that first week, 10 days to pre-acclimatize before you actually go for the summit. That is really the timeline of those first adaptations in acclimatization, 7 to 10 days. When you actually are adapted to a certain level, mostly it's about not getting sick, so getting the misadaptation, where you actually are you can get into the life-threatening situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess pre-acclimatize at home. So the way it works is that you have a generator that is simulating altitude by reducing the number of oxygen molecules in the space which is usually a tent. You are spending your time in the tent. So whether we have options, either you work on the computer, for example, so you can set it up in a way that you actually work on your computer and in a simulated altitude. But most of the time, it's not possible, or just logistically, not you cannot just get there. So you use a tent and you sleep in the altitude. So we monitor that, and there is a certain required time to accomplish a certain amount of adaptation. So we don't need to go into the details there. It takes weeks and months to actually get some reasonable amount. Why months all of a sudden? When I said before 7 to 10 days on the mountain, because with these hypoxico generators, you will only spend certain amount of certain number of hours per day. So you have to sort of accumulate the time, and so that takes weeks and months compared to when you go to the
Why
mountains.
can't I just rent one of these generators and do it myself and like turn it up high? And
So
what do I need to do?
there's a there is a lot of knowledge behind this. I mean, you can definitely try that, but it most likely will not work.
Yeah.
As we discussed before, the
And
way
we've
the
seen
body
that,
can,
right? We've
yeah,
had a number of
yeah,
people come to us and be like, I tried to do it and it didn't seem to work. Like,
a
what do you
lot of
guys know that I don't
skepticism.
know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's there's a optimum dose for everything, and I guess for
Mm,
altitude specifically, and also it's super individual. So
mm,
everybody responds slightly differently, and so that's why you need like a protocol that's adjusted to you individually. So we are I as a coach I monitor the responses. I use certain metrics to monitor that, and based on that, I can help you with the process. So that's one way. Then the different way that I use more and more is the actual active training in hypoxia. So prepare your body to be active. So the first part was relatively passive. You kind of spend the time passively in the simulated altitude. But then, yeah, we're kind of talking about two different categories here. So
right.
passive versus active, and the kinds of adaptations that happen in the body. So we talk about central and peripheral, what happens in like centrally. So the body senses the lack of oxygen, so it starts to adapt. So heart, lungs, blood distribution, and then there is something happening in the muscles when muscle all of a sudden look at the body, but the muscle lacks the oxygen, and that of course is very impactful. Talking about aerobic metabolism, so the muscles adapt in a certain way, and that there is there's a lot of positives coming out of it. So yeah, we can or I can help out with that as well, and fit it then into the overall picture, like what is
Yeah.
required for Aconcagua, right? So back to the beginning, you want to get fit first, and on top of it, we talk about acclimatization in that order.
Yes. 100%. Great. Well, I think this has been super helpful for people to understand what goes into preparing for climbing Aconcagua. And it seems like there's some really common mistakes that you and I have seen. Just in summary, what are some of the things you want to make sure people avoid?
I guess the way people or athletes underestimate Aconcagua is that it's a really big climb. It's non-technical on the normal routes as we discussed, but it's still a big climb. It
Yeah.
takes a lot out of you. There's a lot going on with conditions. So again, the cold temperatures, the wind, and then really important altitude, high altitude. I think physical factors like weight carrying. So you have to carry a lot of weight at that altitude. So if you're not prepared for it, I mean, what feels hard in sea level, if you have to carry, I don't know, 20, 25 kilos of gear, it will weigh quite differently. You will feel it differently at 4, 5, 6,000 meters. So
Yeah.
takes training. You should go and prepare yourself. And then I guess where we see a lot of like mistakes being done with probably with rushing it too much, to going too fast. So coming to how long it takes to acclimatize. So yes, you can get sick up there. It can get quite serious, and people going too fast, they sometimes even die. To when you
Yeah.
take it to the extreme, and it happens. So don't underestimate it. Contact us and get in touch. We can talk about strategies.
Great. Yeah, and I think that a lot of what Martin has demonstrated, whether purposely or not, is how much kind of institutional knowledge he as a coach individually and we as a team of coaches collectively have with all kinds of objectives like Aconcagua, where we've been there, we've done it, we know all the ins and outs, we know all the things to avoid, we know how to what the gear considerations are, the altitude considerations are, the exercise physiology considerations. We know how to approach all these things in a constructive way to get you the best result. So I think that that's been a great summary of how to effectively train for Aconcagua. So Martin, thanks so much for your time. I
Thank
hope
you.
everyone listening is leaving here fired up and ready and armed with knowledge to start planning their Aconcagua trip, and wish you all the best. So thanks so much, Martin.
Thanks, Steve. And maybe just if I may finish with the positive note there, it's a beautiful mountain. It's a great experience. So it is tough. It's a great challenge, but it's absolutely rewarding experience when you're up there on the summit. I mean, the views are incredible, and it's a great kind of stepping stone towards then bigger climbs in future. So I can only recommend.
Yeah, and I, having not been to Aconcagua, but other things like this, is the people. You're going to meet amazing people and probably
Oh, yes.
create amazing friendships through this experience. So it's a really really special place. So yeah, thanks for ending us on a positive note.
And great food. It's Argentina. You'll love it. It's
Yeah,
also a great experience in that sense.
great. Well, thanks so much. And this has been the Uphill Athlete Podcast. We are not just one, but a community. Thank you for listening.
One of the most common questions I get is, how should I get started with training? Well, they say the first step is the hardest, so let's make that easy. We are offering free 4-week samples of our most popular training plans for mountaineering, trail running, climbing, and more. Go to uphillathlete.com/letsgo to sign up for our newsletter, and you will not only get monthly insights on training for uphill athletes, but you'll also get a sample training plan. It's totally free, so why wait? That's uphillathlete.com/letsgo.